My lords, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome back to Railway Empire as we continue on through the United States scenarios. We've previously looked at the cattle drive in the north, where we managed to achieve the president rating and get a full complement of golden ticks for all of our objectives. So today we're going to press onwards and we're going to turn our attention to the northwest scenario, or sorry, the northeast scenario, and that is the automobile. This one is set in 1910. It is classed as a hard scenario, and there are one or two elements in this that can make it a little bit tricky, especially going for the full golden tick complement. So hopefully we shall do okay today. I've played through this twice in the past few days just to fine-tune a few things, and both times I was able to get a full set of golden ticks and achieve the president rating. So hopefully we can continue that streak today. Much like the cattle drive scenario we did, this will likely be broken down into at least 2 parts, maybe even 3, dependent on the length of the overall scenario. And I will either draw a close myself, or I will have to put in cuts if I film it all, or sorry, if I record it all in one long session. So we shall see what happens there, but it will definitely be a multiple part episode, this one. So let's get started. We are setting the AI to very hard, and we're going for the manual pause mode just so we can take our time, review a few things, discuss strategies and all that sort of stuff without having to worry about time running away from us. So as before, we will suffer a small score penalty for selecting this. However, that will be offset by the score bonus that we receive from setting the AI to very hard. Once again, we find ourselves turning to the engineer for this scenario. I really do believe he is one of the, if not the strongest character in the game, especially the early game, because with the engineer you can really set up a very, very strong baseline economy and leave your competitors behind, and you can really get some rapid early expansion done, mainly because of this huge reduction in locomotive costs, but also this as well, you can start putting down maintenance buildings immediately without concern, so the breakdowns due to poor maintenance are no longer a factor. These two, that can be a problem, but as I said in the introduction to the cattle drive scenario, by the time you're looking into this, or by the time this is going to affect you, you should be in a position where your economy is strong enough to compensate. So let's get started. So much like we did with the cattle drive, we're going to pause it straight away, and then we can have a look at our task list. So we start at the very start of 1910, January the 1st, with $800,000, and we are granted a regular sized train station over here in Chicago, which is our home city. We are going to remove that. That is my standard first opening move, to remove the station you are provided with and replace it. So let's look at our tasks then. So by 1911, the end thereof, we have to connect 3 cities to our rail network. For a golden tick, we have to do that in half the time. So in effect, we have 2 years, because we have the whole of 1910 and the whole of 1911 to do this. So that's 2 years total. So if we do this by the end of 1910, we've done it in half the time, we have the golden tick. This one is not a problem. By 1913, the end thereof, so that's 4 years time, we have to transport 30 loads of steel into towns. Now that is crucial. Previously you could get away with shipping it to a warehouse and storing it there. However, they've changed the parameters of this one, so that is no longer a viable strategy. You have to send it to a town. So we have 4 years to do that. So by the end of 1911 we want to have this one done. Transport 50 loads of gasoline to towns by 1915, so that's 6 years, so 3 years to get the check mark. Again, that's not too much of a problem. I don't really struggle with this one. growing Toledo can be a little bit of a problem because Toledo already has a special building occupying its building slot, so we can't put down a museum, so we don't get the added benefit the museum provides to your demand satisfaction. The other one what can catch you out is this one here, which is to have 3 cities with a population of at least 120,000. However, this one has caught me out once or twice. However, in the latest couple of episodes or the couple of playthroughs I have attempted on this, I have managed to get this with a bit of time to spare. So the ones you're looking at that could be, or that can pose the largest problem, are this one here and this one here. This one, for me, is the kicker. If you can get this, then everything else should fall into place. Okay, so now we've got a rough idea as to what we want to be doing. Let's have a look at the map. So here's Toledo. This is what we need to grow to 200,000. At the minute we sit in 68,000 inhabitants. And here is that special building I was talking about, the automobile warehouse. This generates a perpetual demand for automobiles, which is obviously part of one of the scenario goals, to transport 50 of them. So this is where we'll be bringing our automobiles. However, it does mean we can't put in a museum to boost this fulfillment rating right here. So growing Toledo is something you have to keep half an eye on. We start in Chicago. We have we don't own it, but there is an automobile manufacturer here in Chicago, and they require steel and gasoline. Now, your initial thoughts might be, well, let's get a steel industry set up somewhere and start pumping in a load of steel into Chicago. However, what you will find is you'll get, I don't know what the cap is, but you hit a hard cap in terms of the raw materials available, and it isn't, is it 30 we need to transport? Yeah, it's less than 30. So unless you're also producing gasoline and bring it in at the same time and shipping the cars out, so they're having to get in more and more steel all the while, then you're going to hit that hard cap and you're not going to get those 30 loads delivered in time. So what we have to do instead is we have to try and get a toy manufactory place down. Now, if we go to the toy manufactory in our list of industries, here we go, we can see this does require steel and wood, and you produce toys. So that's where we're going to get the 30 units of steel achieved, by shipping it to a toy manufactory. Now, one doesn't exist as far as I'm aware when you start out, and the only city that will require toys at the start of the game, if you just check these down here, yep, none of those are big enough, it is Chicago. And that is, I think it's 100,000 toys become a demand. You can't see here when it was unlocked or when it became a requirement, but I'm fairly certain it is 100,000 residents. So what we don't want to have happen is Chicago to start to dwindle and fall below 100,000, because then that toy manufacturer has got nowhere to send its toys, so it's going to shut off its demand for steel. So then you're not going to be able to transport those 30 loads of steel into whichever city you have producing your toys. Now, what I found works for me is we first of all expand in the usual way you would with the engineer to get your baseline economy running. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to Madison. We want Madison to start growing because at 40,000 we want to put down that toy industry. We then want either Duluth up here at the very northern end of the map or Rochester to produce a steel manufactory, because just to the north we have both iron and coal available, both of which are the raw materials required to produce the steel, and these two cities are quite handily located with regards and respect to the location of these two. So that's why we want it either in Duluth or in Rochester. Now, as you see, there is an available industry slot in Rochester when you start out. However, in my experience, it's not worth you investing the money, because 400,000 It's almost half of your initial starting funds, and if you do that, then you're not going to have that economy, and you're not going to grow fast enough to get everything else you need to ensure you can progress and hit your golden ticks on all of the other early requirements, all the other early the objectives. That's what I'm looking for. So enough about that, let's get started. So yeah, we're going to start over here in Chicago because, well, that's where we have to start, and we're going to run a simple line into Madison. We're going to put maintenance buildings in both of our stations. I'm going to press all of the wrong keys that I possibly could there, and then we're going to link this in with a nice simple line, and we want it to come about there. The reason I've just moved it back just a fraction is that I'm mindful that we want other stuff coming into Chicago, and we don't want to be having to build bridges over or tunnels underneath our existing track, and where possible I'd like to avoid sharing tracks. That just cuts down on, you know, the potential for traffic pile-ups on your lines. So let's get this started. Let's put down our signals. We want a supply tower. We'll go for the midway point, and then we'll start by setting up our first city-to-city line from Chicago to Madison. We start with the old mode, which is a lot of tractive power, not a bad speed, fairly cheap thanks to the engineer's bonus. However, the problem with old mode is if you go into the engine shed, the consumption rating is quite high, 140%. So they can run out of supplies, sand, lubricant and water rather quickly, so that can catch you out. So you have to be careful when it comes to putting down your supply towers. So anyway, yep, there's our first line set up. The second line I would like to set up, I think I may go into Rock Island and have a line to Madison and into Chicago. The reason being, Rock Island produces beer, as we can see right there. There is a grain farm not too far away, so we're going to have a decent supply over land to give us at least a decent or a semi-reasonable output of beer that we can send into Madison and to Chicago. As I said, Madison, we want that to grow so we can put that toy manufactory in there, and Chicago we want to prevent from dwindling. So what we're going to do then is we're going to upgrade our station in Chicago. We're going to put a regular size station down here in Rock Island. We're going to put down the maintenance building, of course, for that station. And up here, we're also going to expand the station size in Madison, because we want one line from Rock Island to Madison to get some beer flowing in that direction.
You have connected cities with rails for the first time.
And there's that first objective done in the first day, thanks to the manual pause. Even without using manual pause, it is very easy to get that first objective done. It is just connecting to 3 cities, which isn't a challenge. So yes, there's a line from Madison to Rock Island. I know for a fact we're not going to be able to afford this next line, so let's go ahead and issue both of the current bonds that we are able to. That frees up about $500,000, and then we want this line to come into Chicago. We don't want it to come into Chicago like that, however. That is a little bit absurd. So let's manually adjust that, shall we, and get it a little bit more reasonable. Something like... Well, what are you doing? Okay, so you're clashing with that corn farm just there. So let's do you something like... Oh no, maybe not like that. Can we bring you around? Oh, there we go. That's perfect. 140,000. We can afford that thanks to the bonds we issued there. Let's then bring this fellow back and connect it in. So that's 285,000 remaining, which is fine. We'll put our supply tower there, and we'll probably see the old mode starting to run out of supplies on this line, but that's okay. And then we want a line from Chicago to Rock Island. I don't think I set up the line to Madison yet, so I must remember to do that in a moment. And then Rock Island into Chicago as well. And as usual, I'm going 4 trains on each line, 2 starting at either station. So there we go, that's 2 starting in Rock Island. And then here's going to be 2 starting in Madison. Wonderful. And the next city I want to connect to, and we probably aren't going to be able to afford this right now, is the city of Rochester. So we'll put a station down ready. And here we have to put ourselves in the lap of the gods somewhat, because we can't afford to get that steel industry set up ourselves. So we are reliant on the AI doing us a big favour and opting to put the industry in themselves, you know, the private industries. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure if there's much you can do to encourage it to put down the steel industry. I suppose if you set up a line up here to the coal and or the iron, it might prompt it to put down a steel industry. But in my experience, and I'm probably going to shoot myself in the foot right here, but the last 2 times I've done this, Rochester did opt themselves to put down the steel industry. So we'll see what happens this time around. 180,000 for this line, and we also even need a new station or a station expansion in Madison. And I'm going to say we're going to have a new station. It's going to be cheaper, and eventually we're going to want 2 stations in Madison anyway, so we may as well put 1 down right now. So we have 74,000 remaining, which is not really enough to do anything with. By the time you factored in, we have to buy a station, so that's 40,000 gone, so that'll be 34, and then you haven't got enough to put down your lines and then purchase your train. So we'll leave our expansion or early expansion at that for now, but we will get that line hooked up into Madison, so when we do have the money, we are ready to go. 187,000 it will cost us. The return journey will be somewhat cheaper because we won't have to pay as much for this bridge, because we'll get the parallel tracks refund or offset. So yeah, let's just go ahead, shall we? So we want our economy to start growing as quickly as we can, so we'll run at high speed in these early days, just while these trains get on the way, get into their various destinations and start unloading their wares and giving us some money. So our first one is about to arrive in Madison and into Rock Island. We'll take the stoker and just let the game automatically assign him to a locomotive. We're not going to micromanage that, at least not yet. Likewise, we'll do the same with the conductor. This is one of the scenarios where you don't have to micromanage any of your train assignments, because you don't have to have anything such as like an express line set up, and that's where obviously you do want to go into the detail of micromanaging your train staff, because you can get stokers and engineers who increase the speed of the locomotives, and then if you can get a conductor and security guard who provide a beneficial bonus to either of those staff, you're going to increase that speed bonus that they're giving you. So that's where you want to start doing that. But on this, as I said, this scenario, it's not really required, so we'll leave that in the lap of the gods, aka the AI. So 133 for the return journey, not too bad. Who's this? That's a reporter. We're not interested in a reporter at all, so that's fine. We can disregard the reporter there. A surveyor could be useful. Yes, the perfect one. Carries out precise surveys to reduce the costs of new routes by 5%. So we shall hire Mr. Noah Plummer. He will reduce our track laying costs. So has he taken effect there? I can't remember what the previous cost was, to be honest. I don't know if it's taken effect. Maybe it was about 129. I don't know. Well, I suppose you could just add 5% or multiply it by, yeah, whatever. You can reverse the percentage anyway and find out what the old rating was or what the old cost was, if indeed his bonus has been applied there. Anyway, we're getting close to the magic point where we can lay our double track, and as we can see, let's just pause it here, Once again, we got very lucky. Well, I don't know if it's luck or if it's... I don't think it's scripted, but I think these are quite encouraged to put down a steel industry because they have, as I said, the coal and the iron reasonably close by. So we've got that steel industry there. That's great. That saved us a lot of money. So what we need to do now is make sure that when Madison grows, we have enough money, whether that be through bonds, etc., to put down a toy manufactory here in Madison. And also we want to get some wood into here. At some point very soon we want to start bringing the coal and the iron into Rochester so this steel mill can kick off its production. It's got nowhere to go at the moment, of course, so it's not desperately urgent right now, but it is something we don't want to forget about. So we'll put a supply tower on that route now that we've paid for the return leg of the line. So Madison to Rochester. Can we afford a locomotive? Yeah, we can afford one locomotive. So what we'll do instead then, we'll go from Rochester to Madison rather than duplicating our first locomotive, and then we'll duplicate them manually, so to speak, or like this, as and when we get the funds. So we've got 2 from Rochester already. We just need a couple of thousand, and then we can get the one from Madison. And there we go. So let's just quickly pause it. Let's check the personnel. We'll take them, because why not? A promoter. Now a promoter could, pressing all the wrong keys again, a promoter could be handy for Chicago because a promoter might help stop the city from dwindling quicker than it ordinarily would. In terms of research, we could get that for the 40% reduction in price depreciation when you're selling a locomotive. However, I'd rather save up so we can go down this route and start unlocking some locomotives that don't quite have as high consumption rating as Old Maud. And in fact, if we go through the locomotives for this scenario, and we can see the Mikado, or we are some way off that. After that also makes an appearance in Transport Fever 2, so it's nice to see the Mikado in here as well. Consumption only 127 there, so that's a nice reduction. The mallet, look at that, 160% consumption. So we really don't want to be getting any mallets on our lines. The Berkshire, 119%. I think that's the one we want to get to first. It's the easiest one to unlock, because if you look at your research tree, to get the Mikado, you need to unlock 3 technologies. Now, by unlocking 3 technologies, you will also get to the Berkshire. The Berkshire, let's pronounce it properly. So 200 for the mallet, a further 100 there for personnel compartment, and then the next 100 we shall get the Berkshire. And that will be our 3 technologies, and then we can look at stuff like this one here. A further reduction in locomotive price, which is always nice. Anyway, let's continue on because I'd like to get that promoter if possible. So I want some of these trains to start getting into their destinations sooner rather than later. So I need 18,000 for the promoter, which, oh, there we go. Let's quickly pause it. And we want to set Alice Garcia to work in Chicago. And hopefully that will offset the city from dwindling. Now, we could, of course, pay for a museum in Chicago. Oh, the mallet. Let's get that. Let's get that. Yeah, we're going to have a bidding war over this, but I don't care, because that's going to save us 200 research points, which in the early game is quite a lot. And it will really give us a head up on getting towards the Berkshire. What do we have here? Chief Engineer, who gives us an extra 10% innovation points per week. Why the heck not? I don't see why not. Okay, so as we can see, Chicago is now starting to dwindle. What could we give? I suppose we could give them some cattle. I think there is a cattle ranch nearby, and cattle is required in Chicago as they have this meat industry. Or we could just link in this farm right here to give them a steady and constant supply of wheat. And I think that's what we'll do. We'll go for the wheat. Wheat is obviously one of the early base commodities that every city requires. So if we can get that supplied, it might be enough. I don't care if Chicago isn't growing. I just don't want it to dwindle. And I think the city starts to dwindle when it drops below 40% fulfillment. Yes, it must be 40%. We're at 38 and we are dwindling. So if we can get that just to hover at 40 or just above, I'm going to be more than happy. So we need 32,000 to connect this line. So despite the fact it's dwindling, Chicago is also growing at the same time. I'm not sure what's happening there, game. I don't know who to believe. Do I believe the red arrow or do I believe the pop-up? So how I see, the promoter is encouraging people to move in, but we're obviously dwindling because we're not getting over 40%. So that promoter has helped us massively there, because those extra, I don't know how many she might have attracted, 10, 15,000 people. That could be the buffer that we require. Anyway, let's set this up. So we're going from Foster Farm into Chicago. I'm just going to single track this for now with a single loco, just so we can get that grain heading in sooner rather than later. There we go. So now let's pause it. So that will hopefully just tick that above 40%. I'm not sure if it will, but it's better than nothing. So we got the mallet. So now we can spend our 100 research points on the personnel compartment. And that means the next research we unlock will, of course, be the Berkshire. And that will then, we'll swap out all of our old mods for the Berkshire because of that consumption penalty that old mod suffers from. Right, let's see if we can double track this, because if we can have 2 trains running into Chicago, that would be fantastic. Yeah, 28,000, we can afford that. Let's put down some signals. We can't afford another, we can't afford any supply tower at the moment, but we can get a second train, and now we can get the supply tower, so we'll put a supply tower down there. Okay, so now we want to start thinking about getting this steel industry supplied with the coal and the iron. Now these routes are going to cost us a couple of 100,000 because of the distance and the fact we have to cross a river, but it's what we've got to do. There's no two ways about it, so we may as well just get on with it sooner rather than later, because we want to get this steel at least having a good supply of the raw materials ready, so as soon as we can get the toy manufacturer down here in Madison, they can start pumping out the steel, and these trains that run between the two cities can start transporting that steel. In the meantime, there is the Berkshire. Let's do that. How much would it cost to replace all of our trains? There were 90,000, so we're not far off. Do we want to replace them straight away, or do we want to save and build towards getting the raw materials in? I think we want to get aiming towards the raw materials first. We can live with any short-lived speed reductions that are caused by a lack of supply in the old mod for the time being. What we want to do is start getting these raw materials dropped into Rochester, so they can build up that stockpile, like I said, and then as soon as there's that demand for steel, they can start shipping it out. Right, so 300,000 for that, all because of this bridge that we have here. Could we shorten the bridge to take some of the cost down a bit? Let's see, if we pull them right to the river's edge. Well, that won't work, because that's now over 20%. There we go. Yeah, we've got it down to 271,000. So we're still a good way off being able to pay for that, of course, but it's made it that little bit cheaper. Of course, we also want to make sure we have enough money left in our back pockets at some point to put down a toy industry in the city of Madison. So we need to be mindful of that. Now, you're not even getting any supply over land, I dare say. Let's just check that. Let's go into this city. So, there's no way to see how much is being shipped in. Weekly demand, yeah, they're demanding 0.4 and 0.8 per week. They've got none in stock. But it's hard, I don't know if you... Oh, can you do it on this one here, the flow of goods? Yeah, no, they're not getting anything at all, so these are too far away to even do an overland supply. So yeah, we need to get those lines set up as quickly as we possibly can. Let's just check the staff. We've got a conductor. We'll take the conductor. And inventor, no, we need the money more than the research points right now. And I think the other one was a mediator who we saw a few moments ago, but again, we don't need a mediator right now. Chicago, 134,000, so we've still got that cushion there. We could put the museum down, but then we're setting our time for getting these lines set up back even further, which is a pain. And what I am going to do here to get these done as quickly as possible is to start with both of these industries. I was going to share one line into the city of Rochester, and if we then need to separate them later on when we've got a bit more money to play with, we shall do that. For now, however, we can put down the first of the tracks which run into the iron mine, and we'll double track that. How much will it cost? 175, so considerably cheaper than the first time around, but it's still quite a lot for us at the moment. Keep an eye on Chicago, because we do not want that to drop below 100,000, because as I said, that demand for the toys that we want to produce in Madison in the near future will soon fall off. 175 it was, so we're at 118, so hopefully we should get there pretty quick. We did have a nice boost to our income just there. We've got a couple more trains just heading into Madison and into Chicago. Right, there we go. That's a double track to the iron mine, so we can start getting iron brought down. Okay, supply tower we can't afford, but that's fine. We'll at least get the loco up and running first. They're bringing in a full load at all times. The Berkshire is £16,000 or $16,000 I should say, so we'll go for 2 of them. As soon as we can, we'll put down a supply tower in this area just here, and there we go. There's a supply tower. The next thing we're saving for is a station at the coal mine. Research, what do we want now? We'll get that this time around, so when we do replace Old Mold with the Berkshires, then it shouldn't cost us quite so much because the depreciation price has been reduced. Anyway, there's the station at Lopez Colliery. Let's give that a maintenance building. And as I said, we will be sharing tracks here just to save money and to get these pumping in the coal and the iron as soon as possible. So about 48,000 for that, and then we'll duplicate it. And I've just made sure here, look, we've got plenty of room for our trains to wait up here and up here respectively, so they won't block anything else. So we'll give themselves a lot of places to, or a lot of space to park up while they're waiting to get to their stations, which is what we want. We also want 45,000, which we now have. So let's put some signals in on that line. And what we're going to do here is just put in some short signals, just to absolutely guarantee that there's plenty of spaces for our trains to wait out of the way. So that's that line set up. Let's just quickly pause it while we set the line up. And we want 8. So that's a full load of coal for every train that departs. 16,000 is the price. There's 1. And hopefully we'll be able to duplicate soon. Yep, there we go. There's the duplication. Let's quickly head back to Chicago. So we've dropped to 119. So we are dropping now. Is there anything else we can get chucked in here nice and easily? I think it's got to be... Should we go for the cattle? Yes. So we're going to chuck some cattle into Chicago next. And again, just for the time being, we're going to utilize this line here. We're going to share this line just to cut costs where we possibly can. So there's our station. That's where we're coming from. And like I did at the iron and coal mines, I want to make sure our trains have plenty of places to wait without getting in each other's way. So I think that's going to be plenty. We did short signal down here. We've only got 2 trains, so that's more than enough waiting spaces down there. And obviously we've got plenty of space down here. So 62,000 for this. Okay, there's the 62. We want to now duplicate this track. We've also saved a bit of money there because we will be sharing the supply tower, of course. There we go. That's the money for the track. Let's put some signals in. And again, it's not needed, but just to make absolutely certain, we'll put a few extra signals down there. Okay, so now we want to line from Walker Breeding into Chicago with a full load for each train that sets off. 16,000 is what we need, or it's just under 17 really. So there is 1 and 2. Now hopefully the wheat and the cattle will be just enough to tip this back over 40%. Madison has expanded, so this is where we need to put down the toy industry, and this is where the engineer is a bit of a problem because it's going to cost us $500,000, which is a lot of money. Now, do we have... No, we don't have enough company value to take out a third bond, which is a little bit of a pain. What we're going to do for research, I think we could get that for increased transportation fees for our freight cars by 8%. However, I want to wait for this one, mass production, to get cheaper locos across the board. Right. Hopefully, we can do some shenanigans with our bonds before Madison decides to plonk down something silly like I don't know, like a distillery or something. So let's see, we should be enough to pay off a bond. Yes, just about. And yeah, if we now cycle the bonds, so get rid of the previous one, there we go, that's tipped us over 500,000. We can now put down that toy industry. And where shall we put you? Let's put you out of town over there. So what we want to do now is make sure we can get a good supply of logs into Madison. And what we're also going to do... In fact, no we're not, because these trains should know to start taking the steel. As we can see, we've got a good supply here. We can't expand that, it's privately owned. So we're in the lap of the gods somewhat on that front. But let's expand Madison Station number 2. We want a small station at the Scott Clearing just here, and we'll have a nice straight run into Madison, bringing in a good supply of logs. Let's just pause it while we set this up. So we're just about to tick into 1911. It's December the 11th of 1910. So I think we're doing okay on time. What we shall see. So 51,000 to get that track laid down. Let's then duplicate that. 47,000 is the magic number here. Let's just hire all of those. Nobody I really need right now there. There's the magic number for that. So let's now put down our signals up to the logging camp. And again, a couple of short signals just to keep everything parked up nicely. And let's get 2 trains running a full load of logs apiece into Madison. So that is 1 and 2. And of course, we want a supply tower when we can afford it. How's Chicago doing? Oh, good, you're no longer dwindling. Brilliant. We've got you over 40%. In fact, we're nearly at 50% fulfillment in Chicago, which is great. We need a supply tower down here. So let's see, have we now started bringing in steel? Not yet. Hopefully that will soon kick off. Let's get the cheaper locomotives now. So how much now would it cost to replace the old Maud with the Berkshire? 33,000. Let's go ahead and do that. So hopefully these guys are giving us a good supply here. Let's see. So yeah, it's not the workload. I'm not bothered about refund. It is how much they have actually stocked up in the steel industry itself, and how slow this is at producing the steel, which is quite slow. 0.8 units of steel per week, so not a great deal being produced here. However, I think, yep, we've got a load of steel there. And do we have any on you? Yes, we do. So we are now starting to get that steel shipped into Madison, but it's just being produced far too slowly for our likings. And unfortunately, we're not in control of that because it's a private ownership industry. We can't upgrade it. We just have to hope that they will upgrade it sooner rather than later. I think maybe if we increased our industry at our end, it might encourage them to increase downstream, so to speak. So I think that's what we'll do. We'll get the 850,000 and we'll upgrade our toy manufacturing, which will hopefully in turn have a knock-on effect of causing these to upgrade because we're now needing a lot more steel. Well, I think it'll be double the amount of steel. We go from, we need 0.4 at the moment, and if we upgrade, I guess it's going to go to 0.8. That's what my logical guesstimation would be, but we shall see. Now what we could also do if we wanted is start bringing some of the steel into Chicago as well, because they could stockpile some steel here for their car industry. However, as we can see, if we want to get from Rochester to Chicago, we're going to have to contend with this line right here. So I think what we're going to do to save having to pay for a bridge and or a tunnel is we are going, let's see what side of the tracks am I on. Okay, I'm on the right hand side. We're going to connect in like this. Put some signals down there. We want to remove that short signal once that train's buggered off. And we want that short signal removing. Check any short signals on this side. We have that one there. And there is a signal built into the supply tower, of course, but there's nothing we can do about that. Okay, and what we're going to do then is immediately come away from this line, if we can. Perhaps if we do this track first of all. There we go. That should, yep, there we go. That's worked. And we want to bring this line as a bypass around Madison. And again, just to save on costs, we are going to connect this into our existing line between Madison and Chicago, like so. We can afford all that, no problem. There we go. So now what we're going to do is set up a train that prioritizes steel. Let's just pause this. From Rochester to Chicago. And look, you're taking the bypass. Lovely. So that's saved on having to bridge over that railway there. And we shouldn't impact on this because we're literally going in and then straight out again. So we should be okay in terms of traffic. It might get a bit busy on this stretch and waiting to get in and out of Rochester, but that's what we're just gonna have to deal with that. So let's go for the Berkshire, and let's have 4, all originating from Rochester. Okay, so how much was it to upgrade this again? 850,000, so we're still some way off there. How are we doing? We've gone almost halfway and we've got till the end of the year to do this. So I think we're going to be okay. Just removing that short signal that was going to block this junction from the middle of this crossing point right here. And I'm also actually going to give these a couple of supply towers here and here, hoping that they'll fill up on their own dedicated tracks rather than stopping here and causing, well, like that, where they're going to cause traffic for not only themselves but also our lines coming out of Madison. But that's okay for now. Research, now we'll get the increased transportation fees. So we're now coming in and out of Chicago nicely, 16 out of 30, and we have 9 months to do the remaining 14, which I don't think is going to be a problem, and I don't even think we're going to need to upgrade our industry here to achieve that. We can just leave that And I think, yeah, we're going to be absolutely fine on that front. So what we're going to do then, ladies and gentlemen, is once we've hit the magic 30 right here, is that's where we'll call a halt to proceedings for this episode, because that will be, though, that will represent the first major milestone overcome. And then just before we do end it, once we've achieved this goal, we'll have a quick discussion as to where we're going to go next. I know where we're going next because it's the strategy I've been using lately, and that works. But yeah, I'll explain what the next steps are going to be just before the end. Right, research then. What do we want? We may as well get that because we need that to segue into all of these. So we may as well get it now while we can. So just 9 more cartloads of steel required. We have one heading into Madison just there. You've had a random breakdown with no steel, so okay. You've also had a random breakdown in the worst possible place, but you do have 2 units of steel on your back. How much steel do we actually have in Rochester for export? 2 units, okay. So I know I'm sat on quite a large amount of money at the moment, but I'm saving that, and I'll explain why when I discuss the next portion of our strategy. Let's just get that stoker just to kill a bit of time. How are we looking? 6 more units required, so it shouldn't take us too long to get those. I'm not sure why Railway Empire is such a laggy game, but yeah, it really is. I may have to have a play about with the resolution settings for for Railway Empire. So there's 3 units heading to Chicago. I think when that train gets there, that's going to be us done for that objective. We need to do another 4, and we should have, oh, there's 3 right there. So, do you have any? No, you have toys. Okay, you've come from Madison, that's why. Okay. So, you'll take us to 29, and then you'll see us through, unless we have one heading into Madison beforehand. No, they're all going to Chicago, which is fine. Chicago needs to steal as well. Okay, so there's our first conflict amongst train personnel. Thank you, AI. So, Stoker, you can come off and get on that train. Again, I'm not micromanaging it. I'm not going to determine the best train for him. I'm just going to stick him on a train just to get rid of the breakdown there. So there's 28. We should have a train. There we go. So let's pause it. So we've got the golden tick on that one. So like I said, that's the probably, arguably, the biggest hurdle overcome when it comes to trying to achieve the golden checkmark completion for all of these. So that's great. From here on out, hopefully, I don't want to speak too soon, but we should be fairly smooth sailing. So we've got it paused, so we can now discuss what's next. So there's 2 things I'm going to turn my, 3 things I'm going to turn my attention to next, although 2 of them kind of meet, although one of them, I should say, does meet 2 different objectives, and that is we're going to start growing Toledo. That will feed into this one and get one of the 3 cities with at least 120, because this is the other one we're going for. So them 2 are linked, because doing that one will obviously achieve this one, or work towards achieving this one. And then we're also going to look at starting to transport gasoline as well. So my plan is we're going to grow Chicago. It's close to 120,000 anyway, so it would be foolish not to. We are going to grow Toledo, because we need to grow that to 200,000 as part of one of the objectives, or the optional objectives. And we're going to grow Madison, because in and around Madison we have almost everything any city could ever wish for. We have corn, vegetables, we have milk, we have logs here and here, which we're already supplying anyway. We have cattle for the industry that is in Madison. We have wheat just up here. What else have we got knocking about nearby? We've got fruit not too far away. Yeah, cotton if we want to put a textile manufacturer in there as well. So yeah, we're in a good place in Madison to get that growing. And we'll also get some wheat chucked into Rock Island as well, so then they can start trucking beer into both Madison and Chicago. The way we're going to do this is have an external warehouse. So where are we? Right at the bottom, big warehouse signaling control. Somewhere like this-ish. We'll find the most suitable place for it. It might be over there yet. We'll determine where we're going to put it, but it's going to be linked to the city. And we're going to have that warehouse accept all those commodities we just looked at. Getting the lines over there, we might have to start doing bridges and tunnels, because we don't really want everything intermixing and holding everything up. We want them to be a bit more direct. So yeah, we might have lines across lines across lines, but if that's what we got to do, that's what we will do. And then we're also going to, as I said, start transporting this gasoline here. 50 units of gasoline into towns. The only town that requires gasoline is Chicago. And we are going to put in fact, let's do it right now so we don't forget, then it's done. And there's no chance of us missing out. We're going to put a refinery in St. Louis. We have an oil well here, Anderson drill hole. So we'll run a line through these hills and canyons here into St. Louis. And then we're going to put a line from St. Louis through into Chicago. That'll start getting that gasoline sent in. Of course, if we're not shipping out the automobiles, then they'll not call for too much gasoline. So what we also want to do is link Chicago to Toledo and start getting those cars delivered into Toledo. So there's a constant need for the steel and the gasoline at this automobile industry right here. But yep, that's where we'll leave it for today then, ladies and gentlemen. Pleased with the start we have made. As I said, this is usually the one that trips me up, so to get that done relatively comfortably actually, we were just about to tip into September, so yeah, we had a good couple of months to spare, so that's great. I mean, it doesn't matter if you have 1 day to spare or 10 years to spare, it still gets you a golden check mark at the end of the day, and you don't get extra bonus points for doing it mega early, at least I don't think you do. But yeah, we're done. We've got the golden check mark on the one which, from my experience and from, you know, reading various forums and what have you, I think this is the one that most people seem to get caught up on. So yeah, that's all taken care of, and now we should be good to go for the rest of the scenario, which in my experience is relatively straightforward from here on out. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode today. And if you have been struggling for that, hitting that golden check mark on this on this objective right here, then I hope this video was helpful and informative. There is a little bit of luck involved in terms of hoping that Rochester spawns a steel industry, but I've played this, including this one now, this is the third time in about a week, and in all 3 attempts Rochester did generate a steel industry. So yeah, I think it's a safe bet that it will do if you kind of follow the same sort of setup we've set up here. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, all that remains for me to say is, as always, take very good care of yourselves. It's ta-ta for now.